EV market just flipped. People don't want EVs anymore. The EV market is flipping, and not in the green way enthusiasts had hoped. Despite all the hype and promises, people are realizing that electric vehicles aren't the perfect solution that they were sold. So let's dive into why EVs are losing their appeal. EVs are still expensive, so let's start with the elephant in the room. EVs are still incredibly expensive. Despite all the hype and promises from automakers and governments, the price tags on electric vehicles are still out of reach for many people. Take a look at the cost of new EVs compared to traditional gas-powered cars. Even with tax incentives and rebates, the upfront cost of an electric vehicle can be thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars more. We're talking about shelling out $40,000 or more for a mid-ranged electric car when you could get a pretty decent gas-powered vehicle for half that price. And sure, people argue that you can save money on fuel and maintenance in the long run, but who has the luxury to think about long term when you need a reliable car today? The sticker price isn't the only cost to consider either. What about the expense of installing a home charging station? That can set you back another couple of grand. And let's not forget that if you live in an apartment or house without a garage, charging at home might not even be an option. So now you're depending on public charging stations, which brings its own set of problems like availability and cost. And let's talk about resale value. The market for used EVs is still shaky. With rapid advancements in technology, shiny new electric cars might be outdated in just a few years. Batteries degrade over time, and replacing them is not cheap. This means that your expensive EV could depreciate faster than a traditional car, making it a questionable investment at best. So, while the elite eco-warriors and tech enthusiasts might have the means to splurge on the latest Tesla or Rivian, the average Joe is left wondering if an EV is really worth the financial burden. It's a classic case of the rich getting richer and the rest of us being told to go green without any real support to make that feasible. So, essentially, electric vehicles are still a luxury item for many, not the mass market solution they're touted to be. Unless the prices come down significantly and infrastructure improves, don't be surprised if people continue to steer clear of EVs. The bottom line is that most of us just can't afford to go electric. EVs are secondary vehicles, according to J.D. Power survey. Let's dig into another glaring issue with EVs. They're not even the primary choice for most people who own them. According to a J.D. Power survey, a significant number of EV owners treat their electric cars as secondary vehicles. Now, what does that tell us? First off, it shows that even folks who can afford EVs don't rely on them for their main transportation needs. If EVs were really the future of driving, wouldn't you expect their owners to be using them every day, all the time? Instead, many are keeping their trusty gas-powered cars as their go-to option for longer trips, vacations, or even just regular daily commutes. Why? Well, because EVs, for their high-tech appeal, come with limitations that make them less practical as primary vehicles. Range anxiety is real. People are still worried about running out of juice in the middle of nowhere, especially since charging infrastructure is far from ubiquitous. Not everyone has the time or patience to plan their journeys around charging station locations, which are often few and far between compared to the ubiquitous gas stations we have today. Moreover, charging an EV isn't as quick as filling up a tank of gas. Even the fastest superchargers take about 30 minutes to give you a decent range, and that's if you can find one available and in working condition. Compare that to the 5 minutes it takes to fill up a gas tank and be back on the road. For people with busy lives, that extra time is a deal breaker. Then there's the issue of cold weather performance. EV batteries lose efficiency in cold climates, reducing their range significantly. If you live in a place with harsh winters, relying on an EV could mean getting stranded in freezing conditions, something no one wants to risk. So current EV owners recognize that these vehicles aren't quite up to task for being their sole mode of transport. They need a reliable backup, an insurance policy, if you will, which more often than not is a conventional gasoline-powered car. This dual vehicle necessity undermines the argument that EVs are a practical and superior replacement for traditional cars. EVs are not reliable. Let's get to the heart of another major issue: reliability. Electric vehicles might seem like cutting-edge tech marvels, but when it comes to reliability, they often fall short. Despite all the promises of a hassle-free driving experience, the reality is that EVs come with a host of problems that make them anything but dependable. First off, EVs are packed with complex technology that can be prone to malfunctions. The more gadgets and high-tech components a car has, the more there is to go wrong. Battery issues, software glitches, and electronic failures are not uncommon. A small problem with the battery management system, for example, can render the car unusable, and when something does go wrong, finding a qualified mechanic who can fix it, that can be a nightmare. Unlike traditional cars, which can be serviced at almost any corner garage, EVs often require specialized knowledge and tools that aren't widely available. Moreover, the battery is the heart of an EV, and it's also the Achilles heel. Battery degradation over time is a well-known issue. As the battery ages, it holds less charge and your range drops. What was once a 300-mile range can decrease significantly after a few years' use, and replacing a battery isn't like replacing a car battery in a gas-powered vehicle. It can cost thousands of dollars, sometimes nearly as much as a new car. Who wants to deal with that kind of uncertainty and expense? Then there's the issue of software updates. Many EVs require regular updates to function optimally, much like your smartphone. However, these updates can sometimes cause more problems than they fix. There have been numerous reports of updates bricking cars or causing significant bugs that need additional fixes. Imagine waking up one day to find out that your car, which worked perfectly the day before, is now malfunctioning because of a buggy update. That is not just inconvenient. It is downright infuriating. And on top of that, let's not forget about the infrastructure. The reliability of an EV isn't just about the car itself, but also about the charging network. See, unfortunately, charging stations can be unreliable too. They might be out of service, have long wait times, or charge slower than advertised. This can turn a simple trip into a frustrating ordeal, especially if you're on a tight schedule. Problems with charging infrastructure. Speaking of charging, it is one of the biggest hurdles for EV adoption. If you think switching to an electric vehicle is as simple as plugging in your car and hitting the road, well, think again. The reality is far more frustrating and complicated. First off, let's talk about the sheer scarcity of charging stations. Unlike gas stations, which are virtually on every corner, EV charging stations are few and far between. This lack of availability can turn a simple trip into a scavenger hunt. Imagine planning a road trip and having to meticulously map out where you can stop to charge, hoping the stations aren't already occupied when you get there. For many people, this added hassle just isn't worth it. And when you do find a charging station, there's no guarantee that it'll be working. A surprising number of public chargers out there are out of service at any given time. There have been numerous reports of drivers reaching a charging station only to find it broken, leaving them stranded or forced to detour to another, possibly far off, station. Reliability is key, and the current state of charging infrastructure just doesn't inspire much confidence. Even if you find a working charger, be prepared to wait. Charging an EV isn't like filling up a gas tank in 5 minutes. Depending on the charger speed, you could be waiting anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours. Sure, fast chargers can juice up your car quicker, but they're not as common, and using them frequently can degrade your battery faster. Plus, if there's a line of other EVs waiting to charge, your wait time just got a lot longer. Another issue is the inconsistent charging standards. Different EV manufacturers use different types of chargers and connectors, and what works for a Tesla might not work for a Nissan Leaf. While there are adapters and universal chargers, the lack of standardization adds another layer of complexity and inconvenience, like trying to use an iPhone charger for an Android phone. Not exactly straightforward. Then there's the cost. While charging at home might be cheaper, public charging stations can be surprisingly expensive, sometimes rivaling or even exceeding the cost of gasoline. And if you don't have a home charger, you're stuck relying on these pricier public options. Not to mention, if you live in an apartment or a house without a garage, installing a home charger might not even be an option for you. Finally, consider the impact of increased demand. As more people buy EVs, the strain on the already limited charging infrastructure will only grow. Without significant investment and expansion, the current system is likely to become even more overburdened, leading to longer waits and more frequent outages, and possibly higher costs. So, There you have it. The excitement around EVs seems to be cooling off as people face the harsh realities of high costs, unreliable tech, and a flawed charging infrastructure. Until these fundamental issues are resolved, it's pretty clear that many are sticking with their tried and true gas-powered cars. The road to a fully electric future might be bumpier than we first thought. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.